and welcome to episode 68 of Knobcat Games Dungeons of the Obelisk podcast. I'm your host, Joe Sleppy. I'm Executive Prime at Knobcat Games, and this show is our audio devlog where we get together every so often and talk about our game, Dungeons of the Obelisk, a 2D turn-based dungeon-crawling loot-grinding adventure. And I'm joined today by our animancer, giver of movement, Nyka.
Hello.
And we also have our digital alchemist, TJ Edicernia.
Hello.
And guys, we were just saying, it's been a little while since the last episode, so I think this is officially season 6 of the podcast, if you can believe that. I've broken it up into seasons on Bandcamp, so I don't know what that actually means, but it feels like a lot. We also had a break for about 6 months on the podcast while we've been working on some other stuff.
Yeah, I guess it was right before that, the holiday season, really. We recorded our last one, and this is episode 68, right? So...
Yeah, so 67 was right before the Rat Challenge came out. So since then, we've also added the Mo Challenge as well. So we got glubs, rats, and mosquitoes now as challenges in the game, which is pretty exciting. The Mo's probably should have got their own specific podcast, but I guess we'll get into some reasons for that later on, I guess. But we did get some questions. I asked for questions in the Discord earlier, and we got a handful, and a lot of them are maybe targeted towards me specifically, since I'm usually the one that makes the decisions on what gets worked on. So a lot of the questions are like, when is this coming, or when, or is there plans to do that, or whatever. So we'll maybe knock some of those out, and then we do have some good questions for everybody to get a chance to answer. So a lot of these tie together into basically what I would call state of the game update. So we had somebody asking about guilds, and then we also have, is there plans for something harder than Titan Breach? And then there's also, is there plans for multiplayer coming? So we can maybe get into specifics on them, but how to word this, I guess. But specifically, the state of the game right now, and I'm not sure if the players can tell this or not, but we don't have a huge player base at the moment. So because of that, we're not really making a lot of money from the game. We're making a little bit, and the people that have been purchasing stuff are greatly appreciated. You kind of maybe don't understand how much that helps. The other day I told Nyka I was waiting to pay her, and then we got a Steam update or a Steam, whatever you call it, deposit. So that actually is why I paid you earlier than I was able to, Nyka.
Oh, that makes sense. I was kind of expecting it to be a little later, so I was definitely pleasantly surprised when that came in.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. That money is going directly to you guys making the game and doing work and stuff. So it's appreciated, but it's not to scale yet. And I think what that falls into is we need to be doing more advertising, which is easier said than done because advertising is really expensive. So it's not I can just be oh, here's $100, let's do some advertising. It's more you need thousands to really do it. So that's been a little bit of a struggle right now. So that's something that we're working on. And then the other thing that we've talked about on the podcast before, and we're still working on, is a pitch to investors. So that's something that we're kind of doing in the background. I don't like to talk about it too much, but I do think people should know, because I've basically run out of my personal money to keep the game going at the pace that we were earlier. So when we were developing, we were going pretty hard on it, and now we got the game out, but we're kind of hit a little bit of a speed bump, I guess, where we're able to keep smaller updates and bug fixes and things going, but we can't really work on some of the larger things that we'd love to be getting into, like guilds or new game modes at the moment. So I think there's a lot that we can still do with a minimal amount of time and money, but getting the advertising budget and a development budget and stuff from like an investor, I think, is really our next step. So that's something that I've been trying to figure out, and it's taken a lot longer than I wanted it to, but I think it's going to come around, and I think it'll all happen like in a flurry. It took a lot of planning and getting stuff prepared, but I think whenever it happens, it's going to be like, oh wow, somebody showed up and the lawyers reviewed a contract, and now we're into it and stuff's happening again. So that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know if any of you guys have any thoughts on that. I've been rambling for a little bit.
I think that makes sense because, kind of like you've already mentioned, I feel like this has mostly been funded pretty much out of your pocket, and we've gone pretty far through that. I mean, definitely now we've got some support from the players as well, and that is really appreciated. But I know before we talked about releasing it, we were kind of considering do we want to advertise it? Do we want to kickstart it? Do we want to do something like that? So I feel like that was always kind of a question of is this going to be something that works at scale? Is this going to be something that we can find a way to kind of get off the ground? So I think this kind of next step, or this next chapter of development, makes a lot of sense, where we're kind of trying to be more intentional about kind of presenting the game and getting it out there.
Yeah, and there was always a plan to advertise. I had originally planned I wanted to use half the budget that I originally had as advertising and stuff, but the game ended up being bigger, I guess, than I had anticipated, and it took a lot longer because we basically developed for 3 years before we released, and then the end of March, it's March 10th right now, and the 28th is our 1 year anniversary of launching on Steam. So there was always plans to advertise, but we kind of ran out, and we just sort of ended up putting the game out to see what would happen. And I think the game is I think it has legs. It's just getting people to know about it is the trick. So
for sure.
Yeah, some of these questions specifically, and I feel like I apologize because I have you guys on the podcast, but I think some of these are going to be me rambling about stuff, but people always want to know about guilds. And my thought on guilds is that, if we had a ton of money right now, I think guilds would be something that we would look into doing really soon. But given that we don't, and the amount of work that it would take to get guilds into the game, I just don't think it's possible. And I think it makes more sense when we have maybe dungeons 11 through 20, which would be tier 2 or even tier 3 into the game. To do guilds right, you need a lot of stuff in place, because right now I don't know what function guilds would actually serve in the game right now, because there's not any other multiplayer stuff. So we would have to add a game mode that required guild members or had something to do with guilds. And then I also think there's no point in having a guild if it doesn't give you some kind of rewards. So we would have a lot of art assets and things that we would have to make to get guild rewards into the game. And then I also have a few other things planned that aren't necessarily guilds, but I think fall into that, things like professions, where maybe you have I don't know what to say, a profession, and that buffs your guild somehow. So there's a lot of work that I think gets put into guilds in order to do it right. And right now, I think the focus is more on bug fixes, quality of life stuff, and then focusing on tier 2 before we think about like something like a guild in the game. I don't know. What do you guys think about guilds?
I do like the concept of having a guild to be able to buddy up with a crew, share knowledge between each other, maybe give buffs between one another or buffs overall for being in a guild. But you bring up fair points. Like in terms of what is a priority, it's definitely not as high. Like it's a cool feature to have, but I feel like it does rely on other things to be there before it can find its way in, especially having at least the next collection, the next dungeon collection in, I'd say is a bare minimum for guilds, because it's just, the game needs a certain size in its own right before more multiplayer aspects can find their way in.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the next questions. I guess maybe I should try to give credit on stuff. Vant was talking to me about guilds, and then Shinigami also asked about multiplayer stuff. He wants to know when multiplayer is coming and what our plans might be for it. So I think before guilds goes into place, I think having some sort of asynchronous multiplayer is what we're going to do first, which means real-time multiplayer would be getting on with your friends in real time, and like you use your attack, your friend uses their attack, and you guys fight like this one boss together or something like that. But asynchronous is where you get on, you're playing by yourself, but you can enter a dungeon that requires other players, and those players come off of your friends list, and then you control them. So it's sort of multiplayer because you're using your friends' characters, but it's not actually multiplayer because you're controlling the entire fight, at least on your side. So that's what we want to do first. And I think having, like, for lack of a better term, I would call those like raids, where you come in with other people on your team and fight like a raid boss or something. I think that kind of game mode is more important than getting the guilds first. And then once we have something like that, then we can expand on it and make like a guild boss or something like that, a guild fight, or whatever we end up wanting to call it. But the other thing that I was thinking about, and you might have some input on how difficult this would be, but people always want PvP as well, where they could like battle other players. So I don't know how difficult that would be, and that's something that could probably be done asynchronously as well, where you don't have to be online at the same time as the other player and you battle people off of like a list somehow. But I think that is also a way down the road because of the server multiplayer aspect of it.
Part of it does come down to improving how the servers loads its data. Unfortunately, with me not being as experienced as I would like in that aspect, it's hard to say how hard or easy it could be. In concept, fighting another player is very simple, only because the enemies and the player are more or less the same thing. They just have different visuals, different abilities, different numbers attached to them. But outside of that, I mean, a player isn't that different from an enemy, so luckily, internally, it's simple. It's just the server stuff that really complicates things. Like, how do I pull some random player? How do I get everything that this player is? What numbers do they have? What armor do they have on? Might have to be some rebalance. And like, I feel like PvP probably could have no Paragon allowed, only because some players would just one-shot each other.
Yeah, I had some thoughts on that as well. It's funny you went like right to that, but I was thinking about like scaling Paragon or something like that based on how many like of each runestone you have or something. I haven't really thought about it a ton yet, but there is an issue with that. Obviously Vant is going to stomp everybody. He's like almost Paragon 500, right?
Yep. So
how do you make PvP fun in a way like that is also fair? So you could almost have two modes or something for PvP. There's a lot to unpack there. But essentially we can pull up our friends and look at their gear and stuff in the friends list right now, so, and in town. So like, is there kind of a basis for that already, like a player database where you can get other players' info?
Because you can view your friends and you are already capable of seeing like what gear they have equipped, more or less it's there. It's making sure it can grab what items they have on, making sure all the like stats on it are correct. More or less, it might just be get down to like bug fixing, like making sure this is truly the player at this current moment, this is truly what armor they have on, and these are the correct stats. Making sure there's no odd numbers in there, it's not taking in the wrong values.
Yeah.
And making sure it goes smoother on the system, because when you view your friend, it has to call to the server. Server calls can become pricey if you do it too much.
Right.
So anything I can do to make it cheaper would probably be the biggest priority of it, is making sure like I'm calling to the server to grab somebody. Do this in the cheapest way possible so I don't overload anything.
Yeah. I had some like, obviously we're just brainstorming on the podcast right now, so like I want to be careful about what I say and stuff, but I also thought about like the idea, well, two things. First, let me back up. I think before we add too many more game modes, the most critical quality of life thing to add in the game is multiple loadouts, the arsenal, so that you can have different builds and you can switch between them easier. It's because of the way major stats work. Multiple builds are always going to be a little tricky. You might end up having to like redo your Paragon or something, but at least switching the gear would be stored. And on that idea, I was thinking about like if you did do PvP, maybe like having a way where you register your character. So you're like, okay, this is my PvP build. I'm going to register this for the whatever it is, the season of PvP, whether it's a week or a month or whatever it is. I'm going to register my character at these stats with this gear, and then that's kind of like locked so that you don't have to pull like server stats in real time.
I feel like something like that would definitely help out, is if you can, it kind of just has a saved loadout or a saved state of your character so that it doesn't have to load as much, doesn't have to go through as heavy a process to find the information that it needs to. I want to say certain games definitely do stuff like that, where if you change up your character, the server doesn't know that immediately, so if somebody else inspects you, they don't see what you just put on, they see what you had on earlier because the server hasn't fully updated everything yet.
Right, and our game's the same way. You kind of have to change scenes before things take effect.
Like, when does it go through the process?
Yeah, anything else? Any other thoughts on multiplayer before we move on to the next question, I guess?
That's all I got at the moment.
So the next question was from Vant again about so I just made like shorthand notes basically. He gave like a bigger explanation that you can go read in the Discord and stuff if you want, but he was asking about upgrade costs of artifacts and companions, which are really steep and really expensive right now. And I say right now, they're probably going to stay the same, because even though I'm trying to think of how much I want to reveal, but like I don't want to give up too much right away, but like the future of the game, there's probably going to end up being more ways to get materials for artifacts and companions. They'd make a good reward for PvP, like we just talked about. They make good rewards for like any kind of thing in the game. So there's a lot of different places in the game that we could add rewards. Something like a bounty system, something like rewards for challenges. There's infinite possibilities for places that we can stick rewards. We could even put them maybe on the rewards calendar for events and things like that. So I think there's a lot of places that we could stick, counterpart tokens and vestige powder that would start making the upgrade costs of artifacts and companions a little bit cheaper. That being said, I don't want to just lower them, because we kind of made them high intentionally, because I took a look at other games, and some of the players will know specifically which game, but other games that I've played, it was incredibly difficult to get the artifact or companion that you wanted. It was like, to get like the legendary one, you had like a 1 in 100 chance of rolling that one, of rolling a legendary one, and then of it being the right one was even lower. So whenever I made Dungeons of the Obelisk, I was like, I don't want people spending, I don't want you to have to spend over $1,000 rolling loot chests to try and get an artifact or companion that you want. So we made the system where they roll at a power level. The lower levels are easier to get, the higher levels are harder to get, but you always get the companion or the artifact that you want. So with that, then the upgrade cost is higher. And I like that for two reasons, because even if it's like a low level one, you're still getting the effect of the one that you wanted. You know, it's not like you rolled a bunch of loot boxes and got the wrong one and now you gotta like spend another $1,000 rolling loot boxes to try and get the right one. So you always get the right one because you just pick it and you buy it. And then the power levels, like the difference between like 28, 29, 30 isn't that much, but it's a huge upgrade cost. That makes you commit to upgrading that one and grinding for it and stuff. And I think that part of the problem right now is that challenges don't drop the upgrade materials, and I don't want them to, but right now it's more efficient to spend your energy grinding challenges with the caveat that you're not getting to upgrade your artifacts and companions. So I think I want to change a little bit about the challenge system in the future. I'm not sure when those might go into effect, and they're not going to change things drastically, and they're not going to make anything more expensive, but I want a way to encourage you to do dungeons and breaches more so that you are getting those upgrade materials. So that's something that I've been thinking about, and it's definitely a valid question, I guess, as to why they're so expensive. I don't know. Does that sound like it answered the question?
I'd say so.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, or I hope so anyway. It seems like you thought a lot about it, so.
Yeah, and that's the thing, the main takeaway that I want players to have is that this isn't like a boardroom where we're sitting here going, all right, how do we get the most money out of players? You know, it's me sitting here and saying, how do we make the game the most fun? Because I think if the game is the most fun, everything else falls into place behind that. You know, I'm not sure, I'd maybe like to get Vance's opinion on this, but he's Paragon 500 and he's done just about everything in the game that you can do. And he's said like repeatedly that he still has stuff in the game that he wants to do and loot that he wants to get and stuff. And I think part of that is still having something to upgrade as well, you know, knowing that, you know, if you got an artifact and you upgraded it instantly to max level, you're just like, you're done with it, right? You just have it now. Whereas if you're spending some time with it at level 25 and then some time with it at level 26 and then 27 and you're just slowly upgrading it, it becomes more of like a journey than just going, oh, well, I have all these resources stocked away already and I'm just going to spend them at once and max this thing out.
I feel like the big thing is, it's kind of the grind of the game, grind of games in general, is having something to work towards. I guess over time, and this is something that you did mention, it will pop up when there's more content, is more ways to upgrade items faster, especially when there's more artifacts, more companions that find their way into the game. You do need to get more materials to actually upgrade them, because originally when there was like, I don't know, maybe 5 or so artifacts, it's not too bad to upgrade them. But once there's 10 artifacts, 10 companions, Now trying to upgrade all of them becomes a lot harder. But eventually, once there's more ways to get those materials that upgrade them, it won't be as bad as it used to be, especially since there's now more of them dash the upgrade.
And I think you hit on something else too. Like with there being so many, it becomes a choice. What am I going to spend my time upgrading? Which one is the most powerful? You know, there's a lot of like theory crafting that falls into that. It's like, you know, Wolfspoon or Yule Goat. You know, like you have to make the decision and then you kind of have to commit to it. And I like that aspect of the game.
Big thing about that stuff, and I feel like it's kind of clear now, is making sure that there's a degree of balance between them. You wouldn't want to be a new player upgrading something, upgrading an artifact, and then you find out it's like, oh, this is actually the worst one. That's great. Spent all my resources on it.
Yeah, and I don't know, like they can't all be bangers. You know, that's kind of how I feel about it. You know, some of them are gonna be better or worse than other ones, but yeah, you're right. Like you want them to be balanced as best as possible, but sometimes things just aren't as good and don't have their place yet, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that is the battle of balance, is that some items are going to be worse than others. It's just guaranteed that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, there's always a best in slot.
There should be a degree of balance between them. Like, I feel like we did decently well with a lot of them are balanced. Some of them are obviously stronger, some of them are obviously weaker, but we're not out here designing certain ones to be bad on purpose. I played some games where genuinely that is their opinion. They create things to be bad. And it's like an artificial grind increase where it's like, oh, I got this item. It has a horrible stat on it. This stat is designed to be bad. It's always bad. They want it to be bad. They just do that to make players suffer.
Yeah, and you know, we do have the items in our game that are designed to be bad, and they're literally called trash items. so those do drop everywhere, but I think as far as legendaries go, we have done a good job at balancing them. And then other things that we have put in the game and people have acted like are bad are suddenly, as new things get added, having uses. Because Vant was the other day talking about a build where he uses the main hand from the Karuzaran set along with like Thirsty because it gives you like the heal and the single target damage and stuff. And I was like, finally, like a use for that main hand that everybody said was garbage. So I think there's space for things to exist as well. I'm looking at my time. We've been recording for 32 minutes, so this is going to be a hard one to edit. That's going to take me a little bit, but I do want to get to this last question, which is a two-parter. Wolf Druid Rose asked in my stream, what is the best part of making a game, and what is the worst part? And I thought that was a really good question. I've been thinking about it a little bit, so I'm kind of hitting you guys with it now. So I can either let you go or I can go while you guys think about it.
Either works, I guess.
I got you. Personally, as a programmer, the best part for me of making a game is when I get to design and implement standard gameplay features. If I'm doing things like I'm getting it so that the player could attack something, if I'm doing it so that the enemy is able to interact with the world, if I'm setting up things like, I don't know, maybe status effects, abilities, different ways that the player interacts so the enemies interact with the world or the player. That's probably the thing I enjoy most about making the game. I'd say the thing that I hate the most about making the game is some of the more tedious, maybe like number works, things like if I'm trying to set up how do things get stored somewhere, how does a list of numbers go to this location, just basically setting up. It's almost like I do a lot of copy and paste with it. It's like I need a list that holds a bunch of objects, but I also need another list that holds some of those objects, but I also need another list again that holds a different collection of objects. Setting up those things is just tedious work for me, so it's not my preferred action to do.
Yeah, it's not all glory. Somebody has to set up the loot tables and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably more, it's the difference between front end, back end. The back end work, the stuff that the player doesn't see, is the stuff that I find tedious. The stuff that I'm setting up that the player can see is more enjoyable to actually implement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I guess I got some. I mean, I'm
Right on.
doing animation, so, you know, my stuff's mostly going to be, like, about the animation side of things. But, my favorite thing is definitely, like, I think animating creatures. There's a lot of good creatures in this game. A lot of good, like, non-humanoid designs, and, like, most of the animation I was familiar with before this project was very much, like, four-limbed humanoid type animation, so it's been fun when I'll like have to do some homework and be like, okay, how does a mosquito move, or how does a rat kind of move, and then kind of reverse engineer that, and then it kind of just comes together. I guess the least favorite part is I definitely have a bit of the whole like art degree brain still going on, so I like to jump in the game once in a while and just let play, and I'll like check in on it, but it's hard for me to just like zone out because the whole time I'm like looking at my own work and just being like, oh no, I should have done this, or I should have done that. So it's like that self-criticism stuff kind of makes it hard to just kind of get into it for me, but I'm always really happy when other people are enjoying it and seem to like the work that went into it.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of ties in with mine too. I'm gonna say the worst part of making a game is the money. I've spent an ungodly amount of money on this project, and I'm hoping it turns around and starts making money at some point. But that's like the part that I like hate to talk about, because I feel like if I'm always talking about money, it makes it sound like that's all that matters, but it's definitely not. Like, I made this game hands down because I wanted to play this game. So that's like my core driving thing, is like I still have so many ideas and things that I want to get into this game, but it sucks that like everything costs money and holds you back. So that's definitely the worst part. The best part of making this game is seeing other people play it and seeing other people enjoy it. You know, every day when Vant is in the Discord going on about some feature in the game or some task that he's given himself, or the other day whenever like I logged onto Twitch and just hit the Dungeons of the Obelisk category for, I don't even know why I was doing it, and I did, and I was like, oh, there's a video from somebody else that was streaming the game, you know, and meeting Wolf Druid Rose, and then Llama Thulu was streaming the other day as well.
I think I saw that one, yeah. Or some of it.
Were you watching?
I saw the notification, and then I popped in briefly just to kind of see that someone was playing it. It was really exciting.
Yeah, I have been watching the VODs as I have time, because I keep not catching them live, you know, because of like work and stuff, but I keep watching the VODs back, and as I have time I get a little bit further and further along. But like, just seeing people enjoying the game is amazing, you know, even if it's just somebody popping into Discord, you know, or somebody streaming, or, you know, asking questions today about it. That's been like the greatest part of it, because like I always use this analogy with like music and stuff, and people say like, oh, you should make music because you love to make music, not for any other reason. And I'm like, yeah, but like, your grandma loves to bake cookies, right? She loves baking cookies, but if nobody eats them, she's not thrilled about that, you know? So like, when you make a game or write a song or something like that, like, getting people to enjoy it is like the best part of it. You know, your grandma wants to see you enjoying the cookie. She enjoys making them, but she wants other people to enjoy it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of a bit of a multimedia artist myself, but like, I think that's really what kind of has been getting me into games more, is just like, I'll put like an illustration out into the wild, or I'll put a song out and maybe I'll get like 1 like on it or 2 likes, and that's great. But then I'll put my games out and like, I'll get like 6 reviews on it and like a few comments, and I'm just like, what? I get feedback, and I love feedback. Feedback's great, and just seeing people enjoy it too is great. Like, you don't want it just to be nothing, you know? Like, it's kind of the tree falling in a forest question. Like, if no one's around to hear it, like, what's the point?
Exactly. This might be one of the longest podcasts we've ever recorded, over 40 minutes. Usually we might have done like 1 or 2. I think the one holiday one went really long, but this is going to be a lot of editing for me because I say a lot and everything, but let's wrap this thing up. Thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you for listening to this podcast. If you made it this far into the podcast, man, we appreciate your interest in our game. And we just have a few plugs. If you're not in the Discord, join the Discord and talk to us. We love talking to people about the game and helping new players out and everything. We also have knobcat.com, and I think if you just Google it, there is a wiki if you're interested in that as well. I have some plans to update that in the future as well, but we won't get into that right now. We also have our social media at Dungeons Obelisk. We have a link tree that's at Dungeons Obelisk, and that can take you to Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I think we still have. I've never been on TikTok. I'm not sure what we have on there, but we do have all that. And we also have the place for you guys to review. If you're listening to the podcast reviews are great. Steam reviews are even better. Because those positive reviews bump up our score and make us more visible on Steam, which right now is the main place where people find us. So any positive reviews, I mean, if you have to leave a negative review, maybe, I don't know, talk to me and let me know what you don't like, and maybe I can get that fixed in the future before you actually leave the negative review. But I don't know. If you're leaving negative reviews, you probably haven't listened to a 40-minute long podcast about the game. We also have Twitch and streaming, and I stream every other Friday, at least, if not more often, on twitch.tv/StarRambler. And if you're in our Discord, we also post. I also try to post whenever the other streamers go live. And if you are a streamer, come talk to me, and we'll maybe get you a code for your fans and make sure we post about you when you go live. I think that's all the plugs. I guess we'll see you guys in 2 weeks because we're going to start doing the podcast regularly again.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Later.